For almost as long as man has been in the world, there seem to have been differences. Gender differences, clan differences, caste differences, class differences, and, it seems, for as long as there were differences, there has been the pain and suffering that comes from violence.
Violence is it's a destructive force, and when people begin to feel that they have the answers to all the questions, and they stick to their own particular beliefs and are not open to other beliefs and other views, then there is a tendency towards hatred, towards arrogance, and that leads to violence.
Ela Gandhi, like her legendary grandfather Mahatma Gandhi, has become an ambassador of peace. Looking beyond artificial differences, recognizing that excessive desire is at the root of all conflict, Ela strives for restoring harmony. In December 1947, at the tender age of 6, Ela travelled to India with her family and spent time with her grandfather. Although she was young at the time, these meetings left a lasting impression on her mind. This would be the only significant time she spent with him, as he was assassinated a month later.
Well, when some people have more and others have very little, and what is happening in the world is that gap between the poor and the rich is widening. And when there is that kind of situation, and added to that is the whole marketing strategy which makes people want to buy more stuff, then it leads to conflict, because people want access to scarce resources, and that access then, or lack of access, leads to violence and conflict.
Growing up in the Phoenix settlement that was established by her grandfather in the north of Durban, Ela Gandhi lived in the height of South Africa's era of apartheid. Ela was born in Phoenix settlement on the 1st of July 1940, the daughter of Sushila and Manilal Gandhi. Her father was the longest-serving editor of The Indian Opinion, the newspaper founded by Mahatma Gandhi and printed at the settlement. The press was the focus that brought everyone close together. Her mum was the simple mum of all, who lived on the compound, and the host to its many and frequent guests. During her childhood, the settlement exuded an atmosphere of interracial and intercultural harmony in the center of Inanda. Yet, it also epitomized courage in the face of suffering South Africa. Ela's own philosophy was formed on this fertile ground. She was also greatly influenced by the stories told to her as a young girl by her mom. Stories from the Hindu scriptures and stories about her grandfather helped foster the values that were to become her hallmark. Referred to as the father of the nation by India, Mahatma Gandhi could also be called a son of South Africa. It was in South Africa that the philosophy of peaceful yet forceful resistance was born in him. He called it Satyagraha, literally meaning a soul force based on truth, and used it to free India from the shackles of imperialism.
I felt that people needed help. When people are in conflict, they need somebody who is going to listen to their problems and help them to sort out and begin to understand what are the issues and how to tackle them.
Ela became aware of the ills affecting South African society at an early age. She saw the oppression, the poverty, and the stark inequality within society, and took part in many peaceful protests during her high school years. Her sensitivities thus determined her career path, and Ela obtained an honours in social sciences before joining the Verulam Child Welfare Department as a social worker, attending to the needs of the oppressed during those trying apartheid years.
Well, I believe that all of us have an inner voice. And if we listen to that inner voice, if we are spiritual enough and reach out within ourselves or reach within ourselves, we can hear that voice, and there is a calling for each one of us to do the kind of things that God wants us to do. So I think with me, that was one of the reasons why I became a social worker, because I felt that inner urge and inner voice that said to me, this is what you should be doing.
One of her early assignments as a social worker took her to Amaoti, a township south of Verulam known during the time for its high crime and unrest. To many, this was fraught with danger. To Ela, this was her duty, her chance to help ease the racial tensions and heal the community.
I went to Amaoti not to show to everybody that I'm so courageous or anything like that, but because there was a calling. People out there needed my help. We lived close to Amaoti, and I knew a lot of people out there. They came to me and they asked me for help, and that's the reason why I went there.
Ideals of the Mahatma flowing once again through his grandchild. Honesty enough to see the world for what it is, truth enough to acknowledge this reality, and courage enough to take action to heal and restore. Today, South Africa is still haunted by the clouds of its dark past, a stormy past of battered people, torn up communities and broken families, a past that saw human dignity violated and the human spirit suppressed. It was during these turbulent years that the young Ela grew up in Inanda at the Phoenix settlement established by her grandfather. Almost across the road was the Ramgobin family, and a common understanding of the time led to the marriage of Ela to Mewa Ramgobin.
Well, I think what attracted me to her was her simplicity, her unsophisticated approach to life.
Being neighbours, Ela and Mewa had known each other for most of their lives, and after their marriage, Ela continued as a social worker with Mewa as a young insurance consultant. Although their focus was on the ideals of change, their family lives had also blossomed, and in 1964, Kedar, their first son, was born. The family began to grow, and a few years later, a second son, Kush, was born. Followed by 3 girls, Asha and the twins Arti and Ashish. Life became very full, with Ela's commitment to work being balanced by her growing family. With her inherent patience, tolerance, love and care for the children.
We were brought up to believe in all religions, respect all religions, because there is only one God. And because of that, we were also taught that by respecting human beings, that if you can't help someone in need, do not trample them, but try and help them. If you can't, walk away.
The most outstanding thing for me was that from the time we were children, we grew up vegetarian. And as children, you must know that we questioned why. And from a simple thing like explaining to us the relevance of not killing animals, not hurting animals, and being compassionate, we always had pets. And my mom always used to tell us that if you can learn how to look after an animal, you look after other human beings.
One of the cornerstone tenets of Hinduism is ahimsa, non-injury or non-violence as espoused by Mahatma Gandhi, where every being is recognized as being part of an inherent divinity. Non-injury or non-violence as espoused by Mahatma Gandhi, where every being is recognized as being part of an inherent divinity.
I saw my mom's compassion on a larger level as a teenager then, growing up in an apartheid era, where mom was then involved in assisting with strategy, assisting with activists, training activists. When we were young, mom often housed activists who were in hiding in our home. And our home was a safe house. It was a home that was always open to everyone.
She'd be very quietly spoken. She wouldn't assert herself. And in fact, in that way, she engages you because now you're listening and you're listening carefully. Some things would seem maybe a little abstract, a little spiritual. I'm a very concrete and material man in one way. And yet, I'd listen very carefully to what you were saying, partly because I knew the history and I knew this woman was good under pressure. And then partly because she had something valuable to say.
In terms of equality, I think she's really lived it in how she's interacted in communities. And she's always talked about and always practiced true equality in the way in which Mummy has lived with other human beings, whether they be poor, rich, well-known or not well-known. Every human being is treated with the respect that they deserve.
Anybody can come and talk to her at any time, and with whatever problems or whatever issues, and she's always prepared. She's there to listen. She always has time for others. The door is always open.
The Ela that I knew and the Ela that I know reeks with a particular kind of a generous spirit.
Since childhood, she has been influenced by the philosophy of Mahatma Gandhi. Did he not say that in the whole world there is enough for all of man's needs, but not enough for man's greed? Satya, or truth, necessarily means recognizing the power over poverty, and dharma, or right conduct, necessarily means eradicating poverty as part of your duty.
Poverty is something that most people don't see because we are too blind to see poverty. We live in our little world which we have created, and we don't step outside that world to really see what happens elsewhere.
Honesty requires stepping out of one's comforting cocoon into the experience of the other. A sobering experience of another fragile world, unsure about tomorrow, unsteady and exposed to the elements. True peace can only come with an urge to assist, an urgent sprouting from the heart.
She always believed that God lives in our hearts, and God is to each person what their heart tells them.
Although a deeply spiritual person, the practice of her faith has not been confined to rituals. For her, religious practice is about reaching out. The hands that serve are holier than the lips that pray.
Mom always believed that her form of worship was work. She believed that if you pray every day, There is no special day to do anything. Every moment of your life should be that special moment where you are giving to God through giving those who don't have.
The magnitude of the social evils did not matter to her. The proven balm of truth could be set to heal any festering dis-ease.
If you look at what is happening in the world, you realize that truth is a very important part of our lives. If we can confront truth within us, we constantly battle within our own lives. And we don't know what is the truth and what is false. Each day when we make our decisions, if we can say, this is the truth, and we follow the truth, then our lives will be much better than they are today.
Another core value from the legacy of the Mahatma is Sarvodaya, meaning compassion for all. In fact, Gandhi named his home in Phoenix settlement Sarvodaya, and Ela, growing up in this environment, has championed the cause of the less privileged and suffering.
People all over the world aspire for the same things. They all want to live a good life. And when I say a good life, it doesn't mean a luxurious life. It means just having the basic necessities of life. We all want that. And if we can care for each other, we can provide and we can make sure that all of us have those basic necessities. Gandhiji believed that if people can become self-sufficient, if they can stand on their own feet and be able to provide these necessities for themselves and for their communities, that communities can begin to live a happier life. They would be empowered, and in that way, they would be able to contribute to their country and to the world.
Gandhi felt that for there to be peace, those who are self-reliant should serve, and those who are served should strive to become self-reliant. The Pieces of South Africa, a legacy of greed and fear that was framed by a policy of apartness. Peace in South Africa, possible through the unity that comes from forgiveness, faith, understanding, and care.
In the past, we've had two philosophies. One is the apartheid philosophy, which said that different cultures should be kept apart. They shouldn't mingle, and we shouldn't be influenced by other cultures at all. There was the other philosophy which said, no, we can all unite together, and that we are one people, we have one aspiration. Everybody wants a better life, and let's all get together across race, class, color, everything else, ethnic differences, religious differences, and so on. In that philosophy, which is the one that I was brought up in, one begins to accept all points of view. You accept diversity, you learn from each other, you can enrich your own beliefs through learning about other people's beliefs. But you can only do that if you have an open mind.
A country is made of its people, and the historical past left South Africans, both the oppressed and the oppressors, in a spiritual vacuum. As faith fell apart, fear filled the minds of all. There were beings, but not people.
I cannot have a relationship with God and not have a relationship with people, because people are created in the image of God. For us, for me, every individual is a part of God. And if I want to have a relationship with God, I have to have a relationship with other people.
During those apartheid years, Ela became more politically conscious and took to activism. Yet she always advocated non-violence as a means of resistance.
When you feel that there's a wrong happening in the world, you want to do something about it. You can't sit by and watch things happening. And for me, there was that calling that I've got to change this. And I cannot just sit back.
Ela then formally joined the NIC with clearly defined objectives of mobilizing and conscientizing people. People needed to be reminded that color was an artificial difference. In essence, all are one. At the same time, they had to resist oppression.
Ela's activities in the NIC were largely restricted because of the banning and restrictions that the state played on her. But she was particularly active in the Phoenix area, Phoenix being a very large working class township comprised mainly of Indian people. She performed social welfare duties together with the Phoenix Child and Family Welfare Society.
As in many townships during those turbulent years, violence was rife in the Phoenix Inanda area as well, with many of the innocent becoming victims daily. It would have been easy to stoop to anger and conflict, but like the Mahatma, Ela was resolute in her faith, in truth and ahimsa.
I don't know any other person, I'm not talking about any other woman, but any other person who would be prepared to go into some of the centers of oppression, the compounds, the hostels, without anybody else going. She went by herself and she spoke to the workers.
For Ela and Miwa, who was also an activist, greater involvement in the struggle meant being consistent targets of harassment. Despite this, in September 1984, Miwa and other activists staged a sit-in at the British consulate in Durban. This drew even more attention to the family.
Our sit-in at the British consulate was based essentially in exposing apartheid.
The events at the consulate had a far-reaching impact on Ela's family.
My children were quite small at that time, young in age. And the police came to our house at midnight and raided the house and then told my children that you are going to find your father torn up in pieces and things like that. They were very vicious.
The family ultimately suffered tragedy when Kush, Ela's second son, was assassinated on December the 16th, 1993, whilst asleep at his home in Verulam.
When I got the news, I was totally upset, broken. I didn't know whether it was a criminal act or whether it was politically motivated. We got people to look into it, and it was a couple of years ago that the Truth and Reconciliation Commission said that they are satisfied it was political, which means now that the case is closed. But we still don't know why, what happened. And I think that for me, closure would only come when somebody says, look, I did it, and this was the reason why I did this.
Despite the atrocities against her and her family, Ela persisted with her non-violent activism, her deep faith acknowledging personal sacrifices as integral to the cause, always believing that the pathway to world harmony was peace.
I feel that we are living in a very violent society. What happened to me has happened to hundreds of mothers and hundreds of families. And I think that it gives me all the more reason to continue to preach nonviolence or to promote nonviolence in the community. Because we need to stop that. We need to stop the violent acts that are happening in our country and in the world.
South Africa's past was rife with violence and oppression. Torn-up communities had left the country shattered. Suffering and poverty inflicted on the lives of so many people. In 1994, apartheid finally crumbled due to the efforts of Ela and many others like her.
And to oppose all that may harm the Republic, to obey, I, Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela, do hereby swear to be faithful to the Republic of South Africa.
1994 was an important watershed. It gave people political voice. But the question for us was what to do with that voice. The urgent issues were that of poverty, underdevelopment, the gender discrimination, and the social evils that apartheid came to be representative of.
I've always been influenced by Mr. Mandela's statement. And he said that we had a long walk to freedom, but we still have a big mountain to climb.
The victory brought with it new challenges as Ela and her peers set out to heal the wounds of war. But the balm of peace had prevailed and the foundation stone had been set for tackling the problems we still find in society today. In 1994, when Nelson Mandela became president, the Government of National Unity set about the huge task of changing laws that discriminated based on race, laws that had discriminated against women, and laws that promoted class division.
Prior to elections, Mum was a really strong activist. She was a strong canvasser for policy change, etc. When she entered Parliament, what I admired the most was how she faced the challenge of being part of a liberation movement that was now converted into a government.
Whilst Mum was in Parliament, she was involved in the domestic violence. She was involved in gender equity. She was also involved in international peace and also on peace between the religions.
For the first 5 years, we had a really challenging task in changing thousands of legislation. We also made a constitution, which is one of the best constitutions in the world. And that was a challenge, and it was a task that I felt was important.
Despite being in Parliament, Ela never lost touch with people on the ground. She used Parliament as an instrument for change and still maintained strong connections with those that she championed.
I think Mummy's greatest contribution was bringing that sensitivity and that compassion that she's always carried as a person into policy development and development of laws for this country.
Ela saw that people were still suffering. Their immediate struggle lay in the day-to-day battle with poverty and the myriad of social evils that come with poverty, like crime, drug abuse, abuse of women, and the scourge of AIDS.
I began to think in those 3 years that I was in Parliament that how does one effect a delivery that is really helping the people, that is meeting the needs of the people.
As a humble, hands-on mom, the policy and paperwork of Parliament seemed so far from the crying agony of hunger. Her people needed food on the table more quickly than they needed new laws. Ela felt a new calling and opted to leave Parliament. Scattered across South Africa are communities who are faceless, nameless, and almost forgotten. One such community is at Ndwedwe, situated just north of Verulam in KwaZulu-Natal, where problems mirror that experienced by many communities throughout the country.
Ndwedwe, as with many, in fact most rural areas, have certain natural problems. Because of where it is situated, there is very little industry, there's very little access to formal work. And consequently, we have a situation that in some parts of Ndwedwe, the unemployment rate is as high as 75–80%.
And most of the young men here have never had a paying job. Jobless and without hope, a condition which Ela believes is a catalyst for conflict.
Like any other community where there's so much of poverty, deprivation, unemployment, there is then the possibility of people trying to get access to funds, to, whatever, to food and medicine and all the requirements of life in whatever ways they can.
These problems are reflected in the community, and with poverty on the increase, society becomes riddled with vice. There is a sense of hopelessness and despair.
From the work that I do here, I would say that poverty is a big problem. Poverty, unemployment, and HIV/AIDS.
When we put people in ghettos, where we, give them nothing at all for to look forward to in life, then life degenerates for the community in that area. And people begin to look at drugs and at all the antisocial behavior patterns.
Hidden behind the formal fronts of homes lurks yet another source of violence. The cry of a mother. The evil of woman abuse.
It stems out with wife beating and all that, husbands drinking, not contributing to the house, and that's where most of the abuse comes, where there's lots of poverty.
But it is also through total disregard for women and a lack of respect. The disharmony spreads to the family, which in turn affects the peace of the community and indeed the fabric of the nation.
Well, 50% of the world comprises of women, and women are human beings. Women should be respected as we respect children, as we respect anyone else. And I think that where there is this power, muscular power that men use against women, then I think that it makes the world a very much worse place to live in.
Today's newspaper, tomorrow's waste paper. Yet the spiraling immorality and vice in our world today seems to be fueled by the sensation of media. Images feed our senses, which feed our minds.
Media has a huge impact on our lives. You know, it affects our emotions, our thoughts, and it shapes our opinions. So the type of stories that are carried through by the media impact on people's lives, and therefore it is important for them to perceive positive stories, which is definitely lacking in the media today.
When media begins to feel, how can we sell? How can we get people to read this media and buy this media? Then they do anything without looking at what effect is there putting the story in the media, whether it's print media or television or whatever, or films. They don't think of the effect of that on the person watching, but they look at who is going to buy it. So when that is at the back of their minds, then they use all kinds of methods. And it's that negative media that has reduced women into sex symbols, that has brought all kinds of narcissism, all kinds of evil into the world.
How has our spirituality been shaped? What defines us today? Can we reach out to the poor? Do we turn a blind eye, or do we heed the value of truth within us and try to restore harmony and peace? The world is ridden with strife, suffering, violence, and conflict. There seems a big chasm between the rich and the poor. So many people are disillusioned. Ela Gandhi, in constant touch with her deep inner peace, has sought to cultivate a peaceful world. The aura of compassion spreads. In Ndwedwe, we find others that have been inspired by Ela and her compassion, inspired by her resilience and her humility.
She's a mentor. She's been a mentor to so many people throughout her life, but particularly over the 20 years that WCRP has been in existence, because she was a founder member of WCRP.
The World Council for Religion and Peace, or WCRP, was formed to spread peace and understanding by people reaching out to people. Locally, in Ndwedwe, the Mavela Creche project is bringing hope to the children there.
We got orphans here in our creche. We passed away, most of them, because we got an amount of 39 here in this creche. They haven't got nobody to look after them.
Having the creche, I think, has contributed to the self-worth and the dignity of all those who are working in the creche and working in the whole community project, because it's a holistic project. If you don't believe that you are worthwhile, that you have worth, that you have dignity, and that you have something to contribute, you can't do it. So by building their self-worth, by building their dignity, by building their capacity to say, we can make a difference, you're contributing to the world.
The Mavela Creche is one such example of people opening their hearts and making a difference, and yet so much more is needed.
Poverty and greed are probably two concepts which contribute to so many of the problems. They in themselves are problems, but they are the causes, and they contribute to the causes of so many other issues, such as crime, such as HIV and AIDS. And the only way that we will address the poverty, the greed, the crime, the HIV AIDS situation is to look at those roots where they stem.
The aura of peace inspires. In Inanda, Coral Vincent shares her vision towards bringing about peace.
Well, I think we both espouse similar objectives. We both wish to work for peace in the world, to alleviate poverty, and also we're very critical of people these days, especially people in high positions who seem to be very selfish and greedy and ambitious.
In keeping with the Gandhian tradition of promoting self-reliance, Coral is giving of her time and self with a vegetable garden project to help people gain their independence and self-esteem.
When people are really poor, that permeates their whole life. So if we are able to provide food for the gardeners and also the clients who attend our HIV/AIDS centre, I think that relieves people a lot, and so then I think they wouldn't be so likely to engage in activities that were antisocial.
Coral's successful project aims at empowering people. Not only are they becoming self-sufficient, they are empowered to help others, to give to the world.
Well, I think peace is in one's own heart and being, and I think one has to nurture compassion in order to bring about peace by your actions and your deeds.
The aura of love grows. Another shining example of compassion is Cookie Govender, who for a number of years has been a volunteer at the Domestic Abuse Helpline in Phoenix, which was initiated by Ela.
Ela and the Ghanaian philosophy inspired me to many ways into uplifting my very own life. And I say that is that I've been inspired in many ways, knowing from the background that I've come from and the work that she does in the community, just uplifting and making the difference. I wanted to go there, the passion that I have into reaching out to the poorest of the poor, helping out and making a difference in one person's life.
The Domestic Abuse Centre provides a haven of care and love during times of extreme emotional trauma, and usually marks the beginning of the counselling process to bring about healing.
We actually try to bring out the inner from a person into saying that, look, there's always help on hand. You can always search your soul and bring about peace within yourself.
Peace can grow only in positivity. And to combat the pavement propaganda of negative, sensationalist media plaguing the world today, Ela has initiated another project to foster positive values, a tabloid produced in the spirit of goodwill to spread the message of hope, peace, truth, and non-violence.
Ela has undoubtedly been an inspiration to me. She is committed to promoting peace and non-violence and promoting the philosophy of Gandhi. Her absolute success in every task that she tackles, every program that she works towards is a true testament to her strength in character.
To expose the values espoused by Mahatma Gandhi, Satyagraha was created, an alternate, positive type of media looking to inspire people towards the ideals that grow world peace.
through the articles in the newspaper, as well as through the various programs that Satyagraha produces, we hope to instill in people the concept of nonviolence and peace, and to cultivate an understanding of love and giving.
The few volunteers who work on this newspaper have been inspired by Ela and share her vision of growing good, broadening people's consciousness and encouraging change.
The way in which we can engender a spirit of peace in our world is to use the examples of leaders in our country, even people like Ela, and just take from what they have done with their lives, and use them as examples, so that we can go forward and hopefully create a better society for our people.
Inspired by the spiritual experiments of the Mahatma, her faith grew into a vision, and sharing the same steely tenacity for the truth as her grandfather, Ela's vision has spawned projects of peace, lifting the spirits of the poor and inspiring those around her to accept all as part of the one ultimate divine.
We need people, and Ela's one of those, who's prepared to try again to make things work.
Every single thing she's attempted to do, she's achieved successfully. It may not have turned out the way she wanted, but she's always believed it's part of God's plan as well.
That spiritual acceptance within her is one of the things that gives her the strength, the resilience to keep on fighting for those who cannot fight for themselves.